Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we'll just roll with this. I can't find it. All right. All right, Cody, how you doing today, brother?
Good. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. Welcome to the Campfire.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. So, your background really intrigues me because I feel like we can get into some really good outdoor-based conversation that is going to benefit the world.
Yeah, this is a striped bass a friend gave me when I lived in New Jersey. It's made from stained glass, and then up here you've got a bunch of so I do a lot of grayling and salmon fishing up here in Alaska. So I've gotten two trophy sized grayling in the state. One of them was a little over 20 inches. And then I got a super grand slam for salmon, which is 4 salmon species in one day. Um 2 years ago. I was on the Talkeetna River with a buddy who runs Alaska Outdoors Addiction, which is a fishing guide up here in the last frontier. And so it was pouring buckets that day, but we had a fantastic day fishing. We were done, but we were done before 7 a.m. Limited out, and the last fish was actually a sockeye, beet red with the green head and all that. And everybody says sockeyes don't bite when they hit the rivers. And this guy, I saw him. I was about to pull the lure out of the water, and he swam out from under a log that was in front of me, chased it right up onto the bank, snatched it, and went on for a run all the way out into the main stem of the river. I had to reel him all the way back in.
Those are the funnest battles, though. Let me
Oh
let me
yeah,
ask you, let me ask you this: What's your dream fish?
uh, like a 40 plus inch tarpon, I think would be like my dream fish, right? Maybe like there's a couple things. There's a bunch of stuff on my on my bucket list. There's the and pretty much anything on Sportfishing Magazine's kind of top 100 game fish. And I think I'd like to get through all the way through that list, but I think I've caught something like 40 of the fish that are on that list. Um, but I've caught everything from mahis and tuna and you know jacks and all that stuff to all 5 species of Pacific salmon. And I would guess I'm more of a freshwater fisherman than 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 a than a saltwater guy. But I mean, I'd love to catch like a really truly like big tarpon.
See, being more of a Metro Detroit based guy over here in Michigan, I'm primarily a bass fisherman. But what I was getting at was one of my dream fish that I had never really encountered in the area was along those gar. And I think about the one time that I got to encounter him and I got to fight him. It was so much fun, but there was so much sentimental value behind it that I ended up
Yeah.
feeling so much of the progression that I've made in life just from that one experience. And I think that it's a beautiful thing when you have that bucket list dream kind of experience in the outdoors and you get to live it because it propels you so much further in life so quickly
Oh
because you
yeah.
get
I
the
mean,
excitement.
when I moved up here, so I moved up here from New Jersey, about maybe 2020, it was January 15th, 2021. So that was 3 years ago. And I mean, I remember once my first fish in the state, once the water started flowing, took me about a month to get on to the salmon and like had to hook into him. But I hooked into this 36-inch king salmon, and he took me for a ride. I mean, he was just like he almost ripped a rod out of my hand. And I was the guy that like weak need feeling that you get when you catch like a really nice fish, so you like, were afraid to lose. And my I was short of breath, and I'm just like holding this thing up, like shaking like a maraca. And um and like guys around me are like congratulating me and stuff, like, ah, it's a beautiful king. And it's just like you said, that was a bucket list experience for me. And I've gone on to catch dozens of king salmon afterwards. Like, I tried not to target them because they're struggling up here at the moment, but Um, but yeah, like a wild king salmon from Alaska is just, like one of those things that guys back east where I'm from are, would save their entire lives for a trip to do what I can do on a Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly. It's those grip and grin moments, though, where you've got the excitement, it's captured in your head that you can draw upon on those days that it's so hard to get out of bed to go
Yeah.
function and do life.
I
That
I
that
know.
to me that to me is something that is so powerful when it comes to trying to build a mindset and a good practice.
Well, and something else, like when you talk about mindset, right, is like I have found many times the best days I've ever had fishing are like the days when I'm like, man, I don't feel like doing shit. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to get up. I certainly don't want to go hike a quarter mile up a stream, you know what I mean? Like against the current and like possibly argue with grizzly bears and all this stuff. But like every time every time I've decided that, you know what, I'm just gonna go anyway, right? Do something that I love. But I mean, first of all, once I get there, I'm like, all right, you know what, today's gonna be a good day. And then you get on the water, you start throwing stuff, and it's just again like it's shifting your mindset. You can either decide to have a good day or you can decide to have a shit day, right? And I any day that I'm fishing, I've made a decision to have a good day that day.
Well, any day fishing is better. Even a bad day fishing is better than any day at work or anything like that. But I think about there's a part in meditations. In fact, I believe it opens up part two of it, where Marcus Aurelius is talking about exactly what we're talking about in the context of, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to face the world. I don't want to do these things. But then he goes into the part that nature teaches us nowadays is that's our business. That's what we're here for. If you're going to be alive and you're going to have the privilege of celebrating a journey, then you got to get out of bed. You got to do these things. And drawing on the excitement of the grip and grin moments is fuel for that. That's where we get these mindsets. It's where the abilities within us start to manufacture themselves.
Yeah, you're certainly right about that. I mean, and it's just like those. I talk about this often with my wife, who wasn't wasn't super into fishing before we met, has gotten a lot more into it since we've been together. And um one of the things that she talks about is the fact that, like, I've always got a lot of optimism going outside, right? Like where she can sometimes get a little frustrated. I don't feel like I'm going to catch fish. She's like, the difference is that you always expect to catch fish. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't think it's as much of an expectation as much as there's no expectations, right? I'm like, I'm expecting nothing. I got a lot of hope for it, but that's because that hope is borne out many times through like perseverance. Like the first time that you fish for 12 hours and you don't catch anything, and then on the last cast you catch a monster 25-inch rainbow, you're like, okay, this paid off. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
the persistence paid off.
That's the fun of what I do as far as with the wilderness meditation thing is you latch into the adventure and the thrill of the reward while you're teasing in all these different ideas and practices that are going to help sustain yourself within the everyday world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's that like there's so many applicable lessons that we can learn outside that we can apply to everything we do, from business to just life in general, relationships, all that stuff. Not just the persistence or like the ability to be quiet and be present, right? But um uh also the ability to, you know, just understand like the needs that were how the needs of what we'd call a quarry or a game animal or or something like that that we're pursuing inform how we interact with it, right? So like, there's an old trapping saying that you want to give snacks to an animal you're bringing in, not a meal, right? You want to snack them in, you don't want to feed them in. That works, that I've found myself saying that to people through my marketing career, like we're trying to pull in customers, right? We're trying to pull in donors, we're trying to pull in viewers, right? How do we do that? Well, we're not trying to give them the whole meal in the first piece of content that they receive from us. We're trying to snack them into the trap, right? Move them further along the chain by providing little snippets, little tastes of what it is that we're offering, so that until they get to where we want them to be, right? Now that's a little bit more of a morbid uh, uh, lesson to learn, right? But it does kind of just speak to the power of like how endemic the outdoors is to the things that we do. Because even conservation and the the politics of the day and stuff. I mean, we talk about where the term conservative came from. It's came from conservationists, people who were who want to preserve our way of life, who want to preserve everything that's great about our country, including the outdoors. And I just think that there's a lot to be learned there.
I think, it was one of those aha moments for me along the beginning of this chapter of my life by examining the North American model of wildlife conservation, where I realized there was so many polarities between what they're talking about and practicing there and where I was trying to go in my own personal life. Things
Mm-hmm.
like carrying so much baggage mentally and emotionally on my shoulders. We get the reason that we hunt and fish is to control the carrying capacity, the numbers along any given area, because it can only take care of so much. And it's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing with us, is we can only take care of so much and hold on to so much before it starts to truly affect us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, when you look at other aspects and other things that we do, you're able to step outside of that story and release those things, because we
Mm-hmm.
hold all that stuff based on the story that we're telling ourselves
Yep.
within the vocabulary of what we have in that moment, and never giving ourselves the time to realize in life we're living almost in survival mode and trying to figure things out in a day-to-day real world context, just like when we're out on an adventure. Yeah, we're having fun and we're enjoying the experience as much as we can, but we're still pooling resources and still pulling everything together and figuring it out in real time in order to make the adventure fun.
Certainly. um it's I mean, and there's so many varied things that you can do in the outdoors to kind of like shake up your mindset or shake up your your optimism and whatnot. And a lot of times it's more about the thinking that we can do outside, right? Like if I'm trying to solve a problem, or I'm trying to figure out what my next move is going to be in business, or what my or even like inspiration for articles and stuff. A lot of the time when I'm stuck on a writer's block or something like that, I'll stick a notebook in my pocket and go out for an afternoon fishing jaunt, or something like that, or even just hanging out with my husky out in the woods. It that distraction, much like when you're looking for something, you can't find it, and then as soon as you start thinking about something else, bang, clicks into your head exactly what you were looking for. I think the same thing happens, and it's just kind of a dedicated way to make that happen by going outside.
Most definitely. And sometimes it's protecting yourself during the most difficult of adventures and other times it's about just having fun and living the experience. But either way, you're able to build those muscles internally. And as you build those muscles, you flex them sometimes even without thinking as you move through the day-to-day world. You get that sense of confidence, that
Mhm.
sense of self-worth and self-value. And as we all know, that's so important to get to where you're going and to reach and achieve those goals in life. But we all forget about it in the process of just controlling, managing the mundane day-to-day life.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, I saw a meme. It was like a screenshot of somebody's like LinkedIn influencer post, like just before getting on here with you, and it said that the guy said you can make an investment in yourself by buying back 40 hours a month, um, or with $1,500, something along the lines of just saying that, like, if you order out, you pay someone to do your dishes, and and then you pay someone to clean your house for you, right? That you can get back X amount of time per month to continue working. And I was like, I I was floored by it because I was like, this guy is missing the whole point of living a life
Right.
like entirely, right? But I was actually really encouraged because in the comment section, a lot of people were like, well, pausing to cook is when I get to listen to my, favorite horror podcast, or, you know, um, or I enjoy cooking. Like I mean, if you're a lot of outdoorsmen are also excellent cooks. I hate to brag, but I'm pretty excellent cook myself. But so I can't imagine a time when I would purposely, now it's one thing if I forget to thaw something or I just don't feel like it that day, that's different, right? But, I can't imagine purposely giving up cooking, which is like control over the nutrients that go into my body, but also the, you know, control over like one of the greatest sources of joy and connectedness and togetherness that not only do I feel like with my family, right? My wife, my kids, like feeding people is how humans have interacted for forever, right? It's always been, I'll buy you a drink, I'll buy you a meal, we'll sit down and eat together, and that's how things are done, right? But also that connectedness to the earth. Everything that we eat is from the earth, and the further you get away from that, like Aldo Leopold said, the further that you get away from that, the worse society becomes. Further you get from the farm, the further you get from the woods, the further you get from the protein that, not just the protein, but the vegetables and everything else that nourishes you. Um, the worse society becomes, because you lose, all of a sudden food becomes something that's just packaged in a supermarket, or God forbid in a that gets delivered to your door in a styrofoam container. You know what I mean? Like I can't imagine wanting to live in a world like that. Like it just makes me want to grab people like that by the shoulders and shake them and just like, look at what you wrote and how silly it is.
I think that gets back to all the way almost from birth, where we're taught to just look for the distractions so that we can just simply disconnect, because disconnection is the easiest way to produce productive results. And within those productive results, there's no need for any sort of personalized value. We just simply sell our service off, take the paycheck, go buy something shiny, and repeat the
Yep.
process. And I think that post is getting back to just streamlining the system. Instead of taking the time to cook, you got to eat. So if you have somebody else do it for you, you got more time to focus on the rat race. And when you step out of that nowadays, a lot of people that I encounter are very, very uncomfortable and scared of it. So we
Mm-hmm.
double down on what we're familiar with. But when you get the opportunity to throw out a word like an adventure, somewhere in the back of their head that still clicks that adventure is good, adventure is fun. And when they get out there and they start doing those things, it's amazing to see not only the expression in their eye, but the difference in the way they carry themselves and the way that they start to interact with the world. They start to connect.
Yeah, well, and what scares me many times is the disconnectedness, that you sense from people that, so I talk to a lot of people back east. I mean, even for work and stuff, I'm always on the phone with potential sponsors and, I mean, people even in the space that are like, terrified of black bears, like, oh my God, I could see a black bear. There's bears outside. I'm like, you live in black bear country, man. They're not going to hurt you. They're like, I mean, they could. Don't get me wrong, right? I'm
Right.
not trying to advocate not respecting the species, but like that, your chances of getting mauled by them are pretty slim. And as long as you're like, there's no reason to fear them, right? You should respect them. But there's no reason to fear. There's no reason to be afraid of them, right? Like, there's no reason to, avoid. There's certainly no reason to avoid going outdoors because of them, right? And I've spent much of my writing career writing about black bear conflicts with human beings that are on the rise in the Northeast and stuff. But what I think a lot of people don't understand is that most of those conflicts are happening in people's garages near their trash cans. You know what I mean? They're not happening out in the woods. Like, that stuff is happening in literally people's backyards. So, and that's that's the difference, right? Is that like, if if you live a lot more like in tune with, I try not to sound all sing-songy and bullshitty, but like, so you'll have to forgive me, but like, if you live more in tune with nature, you live more, more intentionally around your relationship with the world, right? Like and that's something that I think you get from hunting and fishing, right? I think that you learn that the world's not quite as scary of a place as people make it out to be. But like you said, so many, like my kids, I don't have any natural born kids. They're all step kids. So when I came into their life, a lot of them like hadn't really done a whole lot of like outdoor stuff, like the teenage boys were like wildly uncomfortable being outside. Oh my God, we're gonna go outside for like the whole day. Like, there's, there's no electronics out there. There's no, like, we're not even gonna have cell service. We're just gonna, we can take pictures of the fish we catch, but like, that's it, and, you take them off the beaten path down a gravel road to a creek, and then you start hiking up a creek, and it's like, oh my God, what's that in the ground? Like, that is a grizzly bear track. There probably are some bears back here, but as long as we're splashing around as we're walking upstream, they'll probably leave us alone, for the most part. And we've got a 10 mil and some bear mace for the moments when that doesn't happen, which hasn't, knock on wood, happened yet, right? But but then you contrast that, right? Teenage boys, they hadn't really spent a lot of time outside or pursuing adventure, like you said. I think about the difference with my 8-year-old, who I've had her since she was, 6, right? She's turning 9 in a couple weeks, and she's a huge outdoors woman, right? She actually inspired the launching of the Sportswoman Show, which is a podcast on my network, Trout Stream Studios. And she, because she wanted to hear more stories of women outdoors, because she rightly posed the question to me one time when we were duck hunting, like, why are there so many boy podcasts about hunting but no girl podcasts about hunting, right? So I made it happen for her. But like, you take a look at her, and she climbs mountains with her mother, right? She can out hike, I guarantee, I'm not kidding, I'm not embellishing, she could out hike any man that's listening to this show right now. Call me, fly up here, my 8-year-old will out hike you, and you will think she is half Billy Goat. Like, she I mean, even her mother, who got her into hiking, like, she out hikes her, and they go on long, like high peak runs, and backpacking trips and whatnot. And that kid is not afraid of anything. And, you know, to the point where, like, I mean, she's almost like a golf caddy to me when we're fishing the streams, and it'll be a 40-degree stream, and she's barefoot carrying my tackle bag around the stream and like ferrying flies and lures to me as I'm casting at the blowdowns and log jams along the Deception Creek up here. And that kid's just wild as can be. But she was also taught from a young age, like, hey, you got to eschew all those electronics. Like, she still gets a weirdly eerie look in her eye when she gets electronics in her hand and she becomes a zombie, right? But we try our best to keep her away from them. And her childhood is reminiscent of everything that everyone I know says like was great about our childhoods, right? Like, hey, she goes outside, she plays with friends, she spends time adventuring. She's not like, when she goes to school again, she's got better stories to tell than a lot of the grown men who are at her school. You know what I mean? Teachers and guidance counselors and all that stuff. Certainly people back east that I know, like, she talks to uncles and stuff of mine, and I mean, she's got, more awesome adventure stories at the age of almost 9 than they do at 49.
And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I do the same with my son. We're out all the time, and he can carry his own. He's only 9 years old, and I'll tell you, getting him up a mountain, it's no big deal. 9 times out of 10, you give him a bottle of water, he's good to go. And it's those simple things that, I feel like not only with that disconnect, but just with the way the world is, we overlook the legacy that we're trying to leave for our children. It's so much more than a keyboard or an email or a YouTube video that is going to really truly impact them and plant seeds now that are going to help them later in life. I think
Yeah.
about my background and growing up, and it was my grandfather that I would chase around for, to tag along in all his outdoor journeys and adventures. And never once did I ever consider that later on in life I would come back to the things that he had taught me. And those were the things that really saved my life when it came down to it.
Yeah. I mean, well, not just those life-saving lessons, right? Like, the time my 9-year-old, she and I were walking, wading along a stream that was a little bit high and a little bit too fast for her. And I kept telling her to be up on the bank. She's like, I can swim. I'm good. I can swim. And I was like, I can walk in this. I'm wearing waders. And I kept telling her, right. But you got to show them too sometimes. Right. So this time I grabbed her by the back of her waders. Okay. And I said, all right, I've got you by the back of your waders now. Take a step into the water. Tell me how it is. Right. She takes one step, sweeps her right off her feet. I'm holding her by the back of her waders, and she's floating. And she still tells this story to this day, how I was holding her by the back of her waders while she's floating next to me, right? And I kept telling her, I was like, stand up. And she's like, I can't. And I was like, well, do you still think you could swim in this water? No, I don't think I can swim in this water. I was like, okay, well, that's why I keep picking you up and moving you with me. Okay, it's not because you're a baby. It's because I'm 200 pounds and you're like 40 pounds. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm 5 times bigger than you are, and a lot more than 5 times stronger, right? So I can, while this is, and if this stuff is rough on me, then there's no way that you could stand in this,
Most definitely.
It's my job not to, but it's also like, another time we were fishing and I got sucked into waist deep sand, and she's standing there on the bank. She's like, should I get in after you? And I was like, no, stay right where you're at. And she watched me wriggle for 45 minutes out of the sand so that I could get out and, and meet her up on the bank. Right. But I was neck deep in water for that whole 45 minutes. And I sat her down afterwards after I caught my breath for a minute. And I say, okay, what did we learn? Right. That I'm not supposed to catch you, that I'm not supposed to go in after you. I was like, yeah, no, you never go in after me. You go up to you make your way up to the highway, you flag down the first car you see, you tell them what happened, and then we go from there. But but more importantly, what she learned was like, and what I had to tell her was like, okay, set aside what I told you. What did I show you? Right. That
Yeah.
we stay calm when something bad happens. You think about what to do next, and then you do, and you use the tools and resources at your disposal to get, like, whether it's a stick to help you um, spread your weight distribution out when you're in the mud or what have you. Just like, try not to make it worse, and things might get better, right? So, and don't worry about the material things. I lost my phone, I lost my wallet, I lost like a bunch of stuff that day, right? But all that stuff got replaced, and I was able to wriggle myself out of that little issue. So and those are lessons that, like, I mean, I know teenagers who, would panic in a situation like that rather than understand to that staying calm is crucial to keep calm and carry on, right? Like, it's crucial to that mindset, back to your mindset, right? um Going about things intentionally and mindfully rather than panicking and letting your emotions get the best of you is really going to bring out the best possible outcome in most situations.
And I think as I'm listening, that we talk about that mindset and having that ability to be calm and collective and think about things intentionally. But listening to a story is one thing. Getting out and actually living the event, putting yourself into even a controlled environment where you've
Mm-hmm.
got to practice that critical thinking is so important on getting there. It's part of the preparation, really.
Yep. Yeah, and that's those are the types of lessons that I'm really trying my damnedest to impart. And I think that they're like, so a lot of them have to happen organically, though. You can't go to a school for that sort of thing. Like, that's the tough part about it, is that I can't sign her up for a class to teach her that stuff. Like, that has to happen, and then she has to get through it, and then she's like, okay, the world's a little less scary, right? There were a billion things. Now there's that scared me about life, and now there's 999,999,999, right? And as long as I can keep chipping away at that, I think, and showing her that there's a solution to every problem. You may not always get everything you want, but there's always a solution, something that'll keep the ball rolling in the right direction. You may have to make a sacrifice. You may have to, like, you may lose your phone and your wallet, but you still got your life, right?
Exactly.
So being able to let go of those things when they do happen, take the L, right?
Right.
Think about how I should have not stepped to the left. I should have stepped a little more to the right. And and understand that that's nobody's fault. There's nobody to blame for that. It's just what happens, and you keep going. And like you said,
Well,
I mean, I learned those lessons from my grandfather, who just passed away in January. And it's, now that I'm married, I just got married 2 weeks ago, and I've kind of always been like the closest thing Delia's got to a dad. Like, it's really come full circle for me really quickly, how all the things that my grandfather kind of taught me, being able to pass those things on. And then Delia actually told me something very poignant a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking. I think it was just me and her hanging out. Her mother was at work, and she goes, we're talking about the upcoming salmon season, how the silvers are going to hit the river, because that's when we really fish for salmon really hard. And she said, I can't wait to take my kids fishing, because I'm going to take them all the time, just like you do, and
yeah.
that made me feel really good, because that's the legacy I want to leave behind, not like none of the other stuff. Like, it's great that we have lots of awesome photos together. It's great that we play board games together. I'm not eschewing any of that stuff, but I think the stuff that really matters at the end of the day are those adventures that we have together.
I think that's a beautiful story, and congratulations on recently getting married. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Love the opportunity. I got to celebrate that with you for a minute. That's great. And I wish you all the luck in that world, in that arena. It it brings out a whole new test that you've got the skill set to really apply to. And the more you develop over life and over time, the more you trust within yourself. And you're right, it can't be taught within a book or within a school. You have to go out and you have to live these events and face the fear. Because as you face the fear, you begin to change the verbiage around it, you change the
Mm,
definition. And that's where the empowerment to truly go out and embrace life and live it on your terms and successfully, as you will throughout the course of your marriage. You want to be successful together, you want to grow together. That's how those things happen. You go off, you learn how to do it individually first, then you come together as a pair. And essentially, just like the fire here, it glows and it raises and it's beautiful.
yeah, certainly. And it's, that's the that's the that's the thing of that's, like my kind of new test, right? Is being able to, like, because I mean we've been together for a while, but it's just fundamentally different either way, right? Like going from even
Sure.
being living together to like now being a spouse. Like I'm a person that takes my vows very seriously, right? And so it's just fundamentally different, like going from kind of cohabitating partners to like now it's my wife, right? Like, and we're building, like, now it's not just like living on my own terms, because I've always been that kind of person, right? Love living on my own terms, love not answering to anybody. And it's not so much that I answer to her now, is that like it's not my terms as much as it's our terms, right? um where my terms are her terms and her terms are my terms. um and that's been a big mindset adjustment, especially for somebody that's like a like I I'll be honest, I moved up to Alaska not to find a wife and kids, right? Like I moved up to Alaska so that I could just play outside all day with my dog. You know what I mean? And so this has been
Absolutely.
a huge mindset shift. And I mean my family was floored by the fact that I fell in love, and and that I took the plunge and got married, and I'm happier for it. But it certainly was like not where I was aiming the gun, as it were, right? And so with that came a lot of changes that were, that are, I mean, still takes some getting used to, but I wouldn't, and I'm not saying I would trade it because I wouldn't. But it has been a big mindset shift.
And it's the willingness to work into it. You realize you don't have to, even though you coin the term take the plunge, you get to do that in a way that's comfortable for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think what you were just talking about there is a good demonstration of the labels that we put on everything. Because yes, you move up to Alaska, the idea is the man and his dog, and I'm just enjoying life. And then I come across an amazing person and an amazing relationship that is now going to become an aspect of who I am. So you got to still keep that balance. And when you keep the label and the definition, the meaning of it in context and in terms, you're able to do that because
Mm-hmm.
you prevent it from taking over who you are. And I can relate to that because a few years back after I had my transition in life, after my second divorce, it was in my eyes a matter of the rest of my life is going to be just me doing me and being involved with my son, being a part of his life, and the rest is whatever it ends up being. And then lo and behold, without looking, stumble into finding an amazing person and building an amazing relationship. So being able to keep that context, I feel, has been able to keep it in a healthy spectrum, as opposed to instantly when you let something take over who you are, it becomes very toxic and very unhealthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing I've always kind of tried to avoid. So and it's also like, there's other rewards to it too, so like I came up here in a very selfish way to like, this is all about my outdoor adventure and like doing these amazing things up here in the last frontier, sportsman's paradise, right? um but now I get to, experience all these firsts again through not only just my kids' eyes, but like my wife's too. Because like her first Dolly Varden, her first, big, truly big salmon, her first big halibut, um, her first 30 fish day, right? Like when she's, same thing with my 8-year-old. Like my wife's got a video of me kind of like literally jumping for joy when this big king salmon breached. When my 8-year-old, I guess she was 7 at the time. She might have been 6 or 7 at the time. She's fighting this salmon that's as big as her, and we've got the picture of her holding it on the wall next to the kitchen. But the like I very rarely ever jump for joy, right, for my own fish, but like that, her like sweat, like literally sweating and struggling, and having to tell her like, and hearing her repeat the lessons that I've given her. Let it fight, let it fight, let it fight. Okay, now I'm going to start reeling down. I'm going to lean back. I'm going to reel down. I'm going to lean back. And she's, repeating these things that I've drilled into her head, right? All of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm not just chanting these things at her, right? And she's internalizing them. She understands the thing that I'm trying to teach her. And she, I was more proud of her landing that salmon, which was no special king salmon by any means, right? She was a 30-pound nothing soaking wet, like little weasel of a 6-year-old, but for her that was a big fish,
Yeah.
and I was really really proud of her being able to land it. And then 6 months later, or no, it must have been 18 months later, we were in Hawaii. And yeah, did I have to, hold her by the back of the shirt to make sure she didn't go flying overboard when she caught a 50-pound amberjack? Absolutely. But she did fight that fish in herself, and she was very proud of it.
It's planting that seed, though. I mean, you take joy and you take fulfillment out of those things, and when you build the intention to be mindful and here in the moment, you can really see the effect that you're having on the next generation. And I think that not only is what fatherhood is about, but it's also a part of what living the human experience is about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it gets back to the idea of outdoor adventure being such a family based element, because there's so much teaching and so much connection going on.
Yep. Well, there's also there's connection and disconnection, right? Because like the teaching your kids to be okay to be alone, to be all right being by themselves and stuff is also a valuable lesson that I think a lot of kids need to learn kind of outdoors. So I don't always have to be talking, right?
Right.
I don't always have to, like, I don't have to fill every silence with words, right? Or even just like, kind of the fear of missing out, right? Like around it. I mean, my 8-year-old asks me all the time, right? Maybe there's fish up there. Maybe there's fish up there. Maybe there's fish 2 bends around the river, right? And I'm like, yeah, maybe, I'm sure there are physically fish there, right? But we're here and we're in fish, right? And we're not leaving fish to find fish, right?
Right.
Don't worry about what we're missing out on, right? These fish migrate. They're here today. They'll be 200 miles away tomorrow, right? Don't worry about that. Okay. Like we are where we are, and that's what we're here for. So just shut up and fish,
Patience, making the best of the moment, and enjoying and utilizing the resources around you. I
Yeah.
think those are some of the most valuable mindset aspects that you can really pick up on when you talk to an outdoorsman, or when you get
Yep.
out on an adventure with someone that has a versed background in the outdoors.
Absolutely.
So, hey, as we start to wind down, you got to let people know what you got going on, coming up, and getting a hold of you and work with you, all those good things.
Yeah, definitely. So you can find me at troutstreamstudios.com. That is kind of where the body of most of my work is. I'm an outdoor writer for National Rifle Association's Hunters Leadership Forum, for NWTF's Turkey Call magazine and their website as well. I also write for a smattering of other publications, including Sportfishing Magazine and others. And then I also produce podcasts. It's kind of my bread and butter. I produce an outdoor network of podcasts called Trout Stream Studios, under the Trout Stream Studios umbrella. And we like the point there is just to honor the great outdoors through the medium of podcasting. So we focus on any content that really seeks to like pay homage to America's great outdoors. So I produce shows like Blood Origins, the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation's The Sportsman's Voice, along with the Sportswoman Show, and then a personal project of mine called Salmon Wars that just released. It's a limited run investigative series trying to investigate why salmon stocks in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest are cratering. And then that's got to focus on how people can take action to stop trawl bycatch and other stuff that is hurting salmon stocks, which are endemic to this region. So encourage everybody to check that out, troutstreamstudios.com. And if you guys want to talk podcasts, certainly I'm your guy. You can find Trout Stream Studios on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and other places, and then you can find me all the same places.
Beautiful. Cody, it's been great. Thank you. I look forward
Thank you, Mike.
I look forward to meeting up again sometime soon.
Yeah, definitely. If you ever make it out to Alaska, let me know.
Absolutely.